Welcome to this edition of the Legislative Lens podcast presented by the Ventura County Coastal Association of Realtors. You may notice that we are in a different set today as we are transitioning. Today, for our guest, we have Executive Director, Chief Cat Herder of Ventura County CoLAB, Louise Lampara. Thank you for being with us today, Louise.
Well, thank you for having me, Rob. I'm excited to be here.
We're going to have a nice chat. We're going to talk a lot about today private property rights and land use issues. So get ready for the Nerd Fest. Tell us about Ventura County CoLAB, Louise. What do you do? What does your organization do? And talk to us about what you did before you got there and kind of what brought you into that organization.
So Ventura County CoLAB was first founded in 2010, and it was created in response to some challenges that our ranchers, growers, farmers were having with getting permits and being able to actually do what they needed to do to continue to farm in Ventura County. So we've been in existence now. Next year will be our 15th year.
You can almost drive.
Almost.
Yeah.
While before we can drink, but you know.
Yep.
In that time, we've grown from focusing on just a few issues, locally, land use permits, things like that, to really taking a more broad approach and working to fulfill our mission, which is to promote a healthy and growing economy in Ventura County. And getting there through the promotion and adoption of reasonable regulations, both on the state and local level.
And is CoLAB an acronym? What does that stand for?
It is an acronym. Sorry. It's Ventura County Coalition of Labor, Agriculture, and Business. And we firmly believe that when you have all parties around the table talking openly about issues and figuring out what reasonable solutions could be, that's where the magic happens, right? You have to be able to discuss things openly and honestly, admit to issues that may exist with the regulations, whether they be intentional or unintentional. And it's the collaboration that creates the magic. I've been executive director now this will be my 5th year.
Nice.
Before then, I actually started my career up in the Sacramento Bay Delta area, working for the Regional Water Quality Control Board. So I am a former government bureaucrat.
Okay.
Went from that, and if folks, your audience may remember, the Bay Delta in the late 80s, early 90s was a very interesting place to be working on regulations and water.
Tell me about that.
So that was right about the time that the Delta Smelt was listed. And there were all kinds of water quality issues, all kinds of land use issues, and all kinds of water rights issues that were triggered by that. How much water were the farmers going to be allowed to continue to pull? How much water were the cities going to be allowed to continue to pull versus how much needed to actually stay in the Delta in order to protect the Delta Smelt? So lots of controversy. I went from that job, transferred up to the federal level, where I worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And right when I started working for the Fish and Wildlife Service was when the fairy shrimp and vernal pools became an issue in the Central Valley.
Fairy shrimp?
Fairy shrimp, yes.
What's a fairy shrimp?
So a fairy shrimp is another endangered species,
Okay.
Another protected species that exists inland. It's not, and they're tiny. They're tiny. You're never going to make a cocktail out of them.
Okay.
But they exist in these depression areas, wetlands that come and go with the rainy season. Unfortunately,
So they're freshwater?
they're freshwater. Unfortunately, where a lot of these vernal pools, they were called, would form, because they come and go, we're also on active farmland. So I got a little bit enmeshed in the controversy there, again, between yet another listed and protected species and agriculture. And a little anecdote, I ended up leaving government service after about 10 years or so because I got a little frustrated. I had a performance review, and my supervisor said, technically you're doing a great job. However, and I'm writing this on your performance review, you're a little too eager to sit down and talk to the landowners and try to work out a solution.
Wow.
So I kind of figured after that maybe this government thing isn't for me. Ended up leaving, and after a certain period of time, went to work in the private sector, also doing regulatory work. And 5 years ago, the opportunity to put it all together, to be able to, take what I learned about what government needs to do and what the private sector needs to do, put that together and go to work for CoLAB.
Gotcha. Well, that's basically very similar to how I wound up with the realtors. Just instead of like farming and endangered species issues, it was housing. So here in Ventura County, we have ongoing issues, chronic issues with housing, and it's not unique to Ventura County. That's widespread across California, and in fact, it's becoming a nationwide issue. Even back where I'm from in Texas, it's becoming like a real problem. But the reasons in different areas that it's a problem vary, right? So what would you say in Ventura County are some of the issues that farmers deal with that are tied in with land use? Because I would imagine there's some overlap between the housing sector and the agriculture sector in terms of land use concerns.
Well, I think it's interesting that, I agree with you, the housing issues aren't necessarily unique to Ventura County, but
right.
You're well aware. I think you may have even been the person to send the report to me, but that Ventura County is number one in the nation for being unaffordable in terms of housing.
Yeah, it is the least affordable county in the nation to buy a home.
Right.
The average Ventura County resident can only afford about 3% of MLS listings, meaning that 97% of the market is out of reach to most people.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that we have the highest prices in the nation, just that our jobs, right? What our wages are does not keep up with what the price is here. And I think that does indicate that there is something unique in Ventura County. And when we step back and take a look, like what could it be, right? Well, we're coastal. No, but there's other areas that are coastal that aren't number one,
right?
And that are far down on that list of unaffordability. We're a partial agricultural based economy. Well, there's a lot of other places that are partial agricultural based economy that are far down on that list, right? When you step back and you take a look, what is unique to Ventura that doesn't exist anywhere else? And that's an ordinance called SOAR.
What is SOAR?
SOAR, Save Open Space and Agricultural Resources. And it's the law of the land here in Ventura County. It was passed in the late 90s for the first time by a vote of the people. And the goal of SOAR...
Well, we'll pause for just a second. SOAR 1.0 in 1998 was specifically to protect agricultural resources, and then SOAR 2.0 in 2016 is when they added the open space.
Expanded,
yes.
Right. And so it was first passed, and then it was reaffirmed. And what it is I think in part it was a commitment on the part of the voters saying that they wanted to support ongoing agriculture and open space, right? And have limits placed, let's say, on the ability to develop. At the time, with the marketing and the campaigning, Venturans wanted to avoid becoming another Orange County.
That's understandable.
So, there are provisions in SOAR that do allow for land to be taken out of agriculture and out of open space and turn to housing. The difficulty is that are those provisions workable?
Right. So say I own a piece of property and it's ag, because anything that was zoned ag when SOAR passed is like locked in for like 50 years.
50 years.
Yeah, 50
Yes.
years. Say you decide you want to repurpose that property, or at least that piece of that property. What does the process look like?
So under SOAR, if you want to take your property, your hypothetical property, in order to rezone and be able to build housing, let's say, on that property, you would have to take it to a vote of the people.
Countywide?
Countywide, for the most part.
So I'm doing something in Ventura. I'm doing something in Thousand Oaks. I have to ask people across the county if I can do this with my property.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, SOAR is for unincorporated land. So you would be right outside Ventura, right? You'd be right outside Thousand Oaks in the unincorporated areas.
Doesn't each municipality have their own SOAR ordinance as well as the county ordinance?
There are SOAR ordinances at the various municipalities. For those, you would take it to a vote within the city.
Okay.
So still, though, when anybody who has run a countywide campaign, a citywide campaign, you are talking an investment of millions of dollars.
Sure.
And without the assurity of success,
Right.
as well.
You could literally be just flushing the money down the toilet.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
So, I was going to say there's more even within SOAR, where even some land uses that you would think would help agriculture, such as the ability to do food processing and the like, those can't be done under SOAR,
So when
except in very limited.
So when you say
amounts.
food processing, would that be like taking Ventura County strawberries and turning it into jam?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How much of all the land in Ventura County, how much land is actually approved for food processing activities?
So under SOAR, we're restricted to no more than 12 acres cumulative
For the whole county?
within the entire county for projects related to food processing.
Do you have any idea what the actual need is?
Back in 2015, the EDC, Economic Development, did a study, and their economists determined that if Ventura County were able to convert to about 225 to 250 acres of agriculturally zoned land or open space zone land to food processing, we could increase the gross revenue for our agricultural industry here locally in the county by $1 billion. Now, a little bit of background. Our Ventura County's ag industry is a $2 billion industry currently.
Okay.
Right? It's very impressive. We're in and out of the top 10 for agricultural producing counties in the state of California.
Okay.
So sometimes we're 10, sometimes we're 11, and Ventura County products don't just feed Ventura County. They don't just feed the state, they feed the world.
Sure.
So very important agricultural district. $2 billion gross revenue every year. Unfortunately, it's been $2 billion gross revenue for the last 12, 13 years.
Like a flat $2 billion?
Flat two.
So
sometimes it's 1.9, sometimes it's 2.1.
But necessarily, once you account for like inflation, we're moving backwards.
We are moving backwards very quickly, very quickly. Our gross revenues have not increased in the last, say, 12 years or so. Interestingly, when you look back, and every year the Ventura County Agricultural Commissioner's Office issues something called the crop report. And the crop report, data right from the county, what is our gross revenue every year? And what were our top 10 crops? And when you pull that data going back, and it's all available on the county's website. You pull that data going back, 50 years almost. And when you look at gross revenues pre-SOAR versus post-SOAR, pre-SOAR, the decade before SOAR, agricultural gross revenues increased cumulatively 48.6%.
Okay.
Now, in the last 12 years, the increase has been 1.1%, and I'm rounding up.
That's anemic.
That's no growth.
Yeah.
It's zero.
So we're talking about like dollars, but
Right.
like when we talk about like other sorts of things, right? Like jobs. So the limiting the food processing to 12 cumulative acres, I guess that necessarily means we load these strawberries up on a train or on a truck and ship them to LA or something and then bring them back?
Yes.
Okay. So now that's increased carbon emissions. And that's jobs that we're letting other people have that could be done right here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And jobs that would help our farm worker and disadvantaged communities, right? Because these are jobs that pay closer to head of household wages.
Right.
And adding that $1 billion to be able to expand those 12 acres to 225 acres, say, would be an opening towards some of the biggest growth for our county's agricultural industry, quite possibly.
And create an opportunity for folks to earn more money, earn better paychecks.
And, we also have to acknowledge that right now, irrigated ag land in the county. So this isn't even all of the zoned ag land, because there's a lot of parcels, as you know, I'm sure, in your role, where they were zoned something and you can't figure out why, right? We have, but all of these irrigated ag land, which is a subset of the total agriculturally and open space zone lands in the county, it's 100,000 acres, roughly. Wow. So 12 acres is laughable.
Right.
225 acres is still, it's 0.25%.
Right. But we think that could be enough to get the job done.
At least for food processing.
Right.
Now, you are going to run into other regulatory issues.
So when you move a piece of land from, or you zone it where it can do food processing, what does the zone change? Is it zoned industrial at that point?
There actually wouldn't be a zone change. What it is simply an allowable land use change. Okay. So it would still be zoned, open space still be zoned, AE, agriculture, but it allows for that type of use within that zoning.
So we make it difficult to process the food that we grow. Let's talk about the process of actually growing the food. Okay. So I remember from when I was a kid in school, you plant your seeds and then you need sunlight and water. Well, one of the things that makes Ventura County awesome is we've got like 330 days of sunlight a year. I mean, that's why we all love living here. What about the water usage? We know we have water concerns across the state. What does that look like in Ventura County? So
the way it's been described to me by farmers and growers is agriculture is a three-legged stool. Is that one of the legs of the stool is the land. If you don't have land, you can't farm, right? Another leg of the stool is the water. And then the third leg of the stool is labor.
Okay.
And, I do want to point out that SOAR, as an ordinance, did an amazing job at preserving one leg of the stool, the land. I've spoken to farmers and growers, throughout California, including some in Riverside County. And down in Riverside County, they wish almost that they had something like SOAR.
Why?
20 years ago. They're down to fighting over the last couple thousand acres of ag land. We don't have that problem here in Ventura, and that I give full credit to SOAR. SOAR did a wonderful job preserving farmland, but it did nothing to preserve farming. And that's because a one-legged stool
That's not a stool. You can't sit on that.
Exactly. Water in Ventura County has been an issue for many, many years, right? And there are some folks, though, that have some ideas for solutions for bringing in more water, for increasing our water storage and our ability to store. One of the things that Ventura County was blessed with, not just like you said, the 300 and some odd days of sunshine, right, which we all love, and the fertile ag land.
Right.
We also were blessed with a huge groundwater reservoir storage system under the Oxnard Plain.
Okay.
And I know United Water Conservation District is heavily involved in projects where their models, their engineering show that if we enact these projects, which include addressing seawater intrusion into that groundwater aquifer, that include increasing our ability to divert and infiltrate water into the basin, and increasing our ability to even bring supply here to Ventura, that we could solve our water storage problems and provide enough water, not just for our farmers to continue to farm, but also for our municipalities.
Wow. So we have the supply to do it, but there's some like planning concerns and management concerns.
You've got all of these projects need funding.
Okay.
Right? All of these projects need support to make it through the regulatory process, permitting and the like. And there's challenges both at the local and at the state and federal level.
Well, I mean, I know a lot of growers, a lot of farmers. They don't just do like the sprinklers; they do a lot of like drip irrigation as well. Probably as much as they can, because that helps keep their water bill down. But I've heard some proposals where there are folks that want ag water use cut significantly. And can you talk about that?
The Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency has a proposal out, or has a plan out, that so some years ago, 10 years ago actually, the state passed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, right. SGMA.
Was that like 2017 or so?
And it was actually its 10th anniversary.
Okay.
So under that act, these groundwater basins had to be, a plan needed to be developed for each of them to bring them into sustainability, to stop what was identified as overdraft, right? Because you can't just keep pumping.
Like you're depleting them faster than they recharge.
Exactly.
Sure. Exactly.
And quite a few of the basins across the state were identified as being in that overdraft.
Okay.
The plan created by Fox Canyon GMA indicates that in order to reach that sustainability level required under the state law, water supplies to agriculture would need to be cut up to 40% over the next 20 years. Now, that's 40% from today's usage. And like you were saying, things have already changed massively in the last, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. We grow different crops. We use different technology. Not only do farmers use drip irrigation, a lot of them now, or the vast majority of them now, use moisture meters.
Okay.
So, you may, as an example, you may have a sprinkler system in your backyard, right? And it's got the little box with the timer and everything, and you set it for Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, right, for 10 minutes each. Well, a farmer doesn't necessarily do that. A farmer with the moisture meters, they're actually measuring at the root zone. Do my plants need water today? Mm-hmm. And which one of them? And so they're irrigating that specifically to the specific needs of the plant.
Sure.
And so really, our farmers are doing a lot already in terms of water conservation. And so where does this 40% cutback take us?
Well, I mean, I did undergrad at Texas Tech University, and it's a huge agriculture school. They work with Bayer Crop Sciences, whole department on campus. And one of the things they do there is they develop these genetically modified seeds. Okay, and genetically modified seeds to do anything from sustain the cold winters of the Texas Panhandle to the very, very, very dry summers of the Texas Panhandle. But I don't know that there's a seed out there that exists that needs 40% less water.
Right. And, that I've heard people say, well, why don't we switch to prickly pear cactus or some other crop?
That's not really a cash crop, is it?
And that's the thing, right? Is that for a farmer to continue to farm, it has to be economically viable.
Right.
And I don't know anybody who would give up their strawberries for, some prickly pear.
Well,
right now.
Mean, if prickly pear suddenly becomes a cash crop, I think that Phoenix and Bakersfield are going to beat us to the punch.
They might, yeah.
So we've talked about how SOAR interacts with the groundwater management agencies. What other agencies do they interact with? I know they have some interaction with LAFCO. Can you tell us about that?
Well, the ordinance itself doesn't necessarily interact, right?
Okay.
LAFCO, the Local Area Formation Commission, is it's a commission, independent special district set up in the county that deals with things like city boundaries,
special district boundaries,
sphere of influence,
right.
Special district boundaries, and connection to city services.
Okay.
So LAFCO in Ventura County plays a big role in land use development and what projects can be done in what areas. For quite some time, at LAFCO, LAFCO has a representative from the Board of Supervisors, city representatives, and representatives from the public, amongst other board members. For many years, the Board of Supervisors seat on LAFCO was held by the now executive director of SOAR. So there is a connection, but SOAR acts as a separate ordinance.
It's technically distinct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, technically and regulatorily distinct. One example, though, of how LAFCO, plays a role in land use as related to agriculture. Getting to that third leg of the stool, right? Labor.
Okay.
You can't have a labor force if they have no place to live.
Right.
And latest surveys show that there are, at any given time, 25,000 to 30,000 farm workers here in Ventura County.
Wow.
Right. The crops that we grow are labor intensive. And they require not just any workforce, but not only are they labor intensive, it requires skilled
Right.
and knowledgeable workers.
Sure.
Right. It's actually technical. It requires experience in order to work the farms here in Ventura County. Our problem is that I've heard other studies say that we are, that 25 to 30,000 farm workers at any given time, we are anywhere from 12 to 18,000 farm worker housing units short.
Why are we so short? There seems like there's plenty of land to build housing. This whole show is about housing, but in terms of farm worker housing and I know there's a carve out in SOAR to build farm worker housing. It's kind of onerous to take advantage of it, but that's a different discussion. Mm-hmm. Why is there such little farm worker housing. I mean, the residents of Ventura County have indicated 2 times now that agriculture is a priority that needs to be protected, but we're not providing adequate, safe, reliable housing for these folks. What's up with that?
So that's where some of these other regulations come into play, the layers of regulatory oversight. There is a provision in SOAR, and SOAR is actually issued the SOAR organization has actually written letters to the editor in support of various farm worker housing projects. Because they're and it's great to see them acknowledge that we do need that third leg of the stool. And back 12 to 15 years ago, the county and some of the agricultural associations did a survey of all the parcels in the county, agricultural and open space, where farm worker housing could conceivably be built, right? Because you don't want to do it on a super steep slope. You don't want to do it in what's considered, like very high quality, one of a kind prime agricultural land, right? But we have parcels that are zoned agriculture that are not necessarily perfect for growing, right? And that survey identified 120 different parcels where we could build farm worker housing.
Okay, that could make a dent. Yeah,
right?
That could be really good.
But even though those are great parcels, now you need to run them through the rest of the regulatory process, which includes a review by LAFCO.
Okay.
And if you think back to what I said about LAFCO, LAFCO also has some authority over connection to city facilities.
Like services?
City services, yes, sewer and water in particular. Once you run that 120 some odd parcels through the LAFCO filter as to what could be approved, you're down to 8 to 12 parcels total in the entire county.
So you put this on my radar when we spoke before recording, and I did a little research because I was like wondering how big Ventura County is relative to other places. Ventura County is about 2,200 square miles, okay? The state of Rhode Island is only 1,500 square miles. We are bigger than some states, and we can only find 8 sites that'll get approved for farm worker housing.
Under the current regulatory structure, which is multi-layered, right? And so I know that there was the first large-scale farm worker housing development to be built in the county in probably 2 decades, was the Somas Ranch farm worker housing.
Okay.
And it's beautiful. If you haven't been there, I encourage you to take a drive by. Beautiful, high-quality apartments with lots of family facilities, playgrounds.
Amenities.
So, exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly. And, something that we should all be proud of. There were some concerns, however, from neighbors and the neighboring community that, is this the best place for this sort of a housing development? And I don't know the answer to that.
Where do those folks want it to be? Just not in their backyard?
I think the real question is that when you're limited to 8, 10, 12 parcels, you really don't get to say what's the best place.
We put it where we can.
You put it where you can, and you put it in the best place amongst those 8, 10, 12 parcels, right? And now there's another farm worker housing development being proposed on the west side of Ventura, Ventura Ranch.
Yep.
It's the same situation, right? It's going to be beautiful. It's going to serve a huge need. I know that there are concerns from the various neighbors, and they're asking the same questions. Is this the best place? But again, when you're limited to 8, 10, 12 parcels, that's probably the best place within those. And maybe that question shouldn't be asked of the people trying to construct the farm worker housing. Maybe that question needs to be asked of LAFCO.
Sure. Well, I mean, it occurs to me that if we put farm worker housing, more out on farmland, the other side of that is that these folks are going to be far away from services. It's far away from schools, far away from doctors, far away from grocery stores,
libraries, city amenities.
And again, the people of Ventura County have demonstrated that this is a priority for them. But I mean, you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? Like, you either make it a priority or you don't. These people don't just magically appear every morning and magically go away at the end of the shift.
And, I think that you're raising a question that needs to be asked and needs to be discussed. Like I said, that I firmly believe in the magic of getting everybody sitting down in the same room and let's all talk openly. But I find it ironic that the citizens of Ventura County twice now have indicated that agriculture is the greatest and best use for our land, right? They say that through the support of SOAR. But
which passed with big margins.
Which passed with big margins, yeah. Yes. So it's safe to say that, people agree. When we talk about what's the best use for our land, Ventura citizens say agriculture. But we refuse to have that conversation about what is the best and highest use of our water. Mm-hmm. We refuse to have that conversation about what is the best and highest use of where we locate farm worker housing, and how we address our labor needs.
Well, I mean, to your point, agriculture is more than just saving the land.
Right.
There's these other ancillary elements that need to be present to make this equation equal out the way we want it to.
Absolutely. You the one-legged stool,
right?
Idea, right? And what we're running into is, if we don't start supporting increasing our water supplies, if we don't start supporting projects that address how we maximize our water storage and our water infiltration, and if we don't start a very real conversation about how we maximize the housing needs, then agriculture won't survive, regardless of what the land is allowed to be or not.
Well, it seems like between the difficulty navigating the regulatory environment in terms of water and in terms of labor, it's got to be getting expensive to be a farmer.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So that $2.1 billion or so that I talked about, that is the revenue for the agricultural industry on an annual basis here in Ventura County. Those are gross numbers. So these are not net. And as you pointed out, not adjusted for inflation either. We all know we pay more today. You go to Home Depot and you are paying a lot more for your irrigation hose, your you name it, right? So the cost of supplies has gone up. We also know that the cost of labor has gone up, through the state of California with increasing, minimum wage, different requirements and the like.
I know the cost of insurance has gone up tremendously.
The cost of insurance, if you can even get insurance. Right. Insurance is that's a whole other podcast right. as to whether farmers are able to get insurance or not. Ultimately, at the end of the day, just in the last decade or so, the cost for farmers to comply with regulations in California has increased anywhere from 265% up to 780 some odd percent, depending on crop and depending on location.
So we're at least 2.5 times more expensive, and
right.
we could be somewhere almost 8 times as much as expensive.
And that's just to comply with California and local regulations. That's not how much it costs to buy, seed, fertilizer, water, etc. So those aren't numbers that I'm making up.
Sure.
Those are numbers that there's been researchers at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo who have looked at these regulatory costs for at least the last 2 decades.
They're pretty smart up there.
And that their most recent report, is very disturbing with those percentages.
Wow.
And at the same time, our gross revenues remaining flat. At some point, farming simply is not going to be an economic choice anymore here in this county.
Well, so we got a lot of unintended consequences, it sounds like, of these policies. And, SOAR 1.0 is 1998, SOAR 2.0 is 2016. A lot's happened since 2016, but even think back to like COVID in 2020, right? Like a lot has happened in the last 4 years, or coming up on 5 years, right? Like we're almost out of 2024. If we are going, like say we were going to reimagine SOAR, we're going to paint out like SOAR 3.0. What does that look like to you? What does something look like that can be adaptable and flexible to our future needs while preserving what makes Ventura County special, preserving the agriculture, preserving the open space? I mean, because like I was at a Santa Paula city council meeting several weeks ago where I heard from a lady who spoke at the open comment period of the city council meeting. And she was understandably upset that her kids, so like, okay, I don't remember the name of the organization. Let's just call it like the National Park Association, whatever it is. There's actually a formula that exists where you plug in the geographic footprint of your municipality, like how much square miles and the population, and then it'll actually spit you out how much park space you're supposed to have. And Santa Paula is like way under the number. And she was saying, hey, my kids don't have a place to play. My kids don't have a place to ride their bikes safely. They have to ride their bikes on the street. And she was saying, I started talking to people about developing some space that's currently unused into a park, only to find out that it's SOAR space and we can't even develop what I thought I was saving open space for into a park. We're not allowed to do that. What does SOAR 3.0 look like in terms of being able to build adequate housing, being able to develop open space into parks, which I would argue is still open space? What does it look like for agriculture?
I think that, there's a lot of different options here. First I want to say, that again, in some ways the issue is that not that SOAR needs to go away. I'm not saying that at all.
Sure.
Right? Did it go far enough? It did a fantastic job preserving land that on a map in the planning department at the county it has the letters on each parcel AE or OS, right?
Okay.
But we know that there's more than just the land, for one, that supports farming, right? Farmers need to have options to increase revenues, whether that be through the agricultural food processing and allowing, our farmers to take advantage of the fact that, a basket of strawberries sells for $6, right? Whereas a jar of jam can sell for more.
Right.
So allowing our farmers to turn their crops into higher revenue at generating products. In my mind, that's still part of farming, right? And it's still part of highlighting and showcasing what makes Ventura County so amazing. We also need to examine SOAR and our other regulations to expand farmers' ability to engage in agricultural tourism.
Okay.
Agricultural tourism, very, very,
What is that? Is that like where people come out and come in the morning and bring their own basket and pick their own strawberries?
It could.
Okay.
It could also mean that, you go spend a weekend at a bed and breakfast on a ranch somewhere, right? Or that ranch can host, gatherings and events and different things. We can do tastings. Even
that'd be cool.
Other areas have expanded. I mean, think of the wine industry, right? Mm-hmm. Not that Ventura County has a lot of grape growing or wine. We have a little, but there is a farmer that grows coffee.
Really?
Here in Ventura County,
wow.
Yes, and it's very high quality,
yeah.
And it is very much a niche
mm-hmm.
crop. She can't do tastings. So how do we expand, right? Because that is a complete other revenue stream that allows her to generate the revenue to expand her coffee growing or even sustain her coffee growing or cover a bad year with avocados or cover a bad year with lemons, right? So how do we go through SOAR together with farmers at the table, ranchers at the table, and figure out, okay, how do we improve the language in SOAR, modify the language in SOAR to allow farmers to do these things that are very much a part of farming? So that's part one. I think also part two, we need to take a long, hard look at what things have changed and what things may be coming down from the state legislature. Assemblyman Steve Bennett, who is one of the writers of SOAR, he's on the SOAR board, he actually reached out to our local farm bureau and it told them that there is quite possibly, there are discussions happening at the state legislature where there will be mandates for taking land out of farm production coming from the state. So our farmers could be told soon that you need to take, you have 100 acres, you need to take 20 out of production. Well, under SOAR, what do you do with that?
You're not allowed to develop it into something else under SOAR.
No.
You'll probably still be expected to pay property taxes on it.
Property taxes, you'll be expected to do fire clearance. You'll be expected to manage the runoff. You'll be expected.
But you can't generate any economic value out of this property.
Right. Because what grows without water?
Weeds?
Tumbleweeds,
yeah,
right? And there's no market yet for tumbleweeds. So how do we turn that lens onto SOAR and figure out the language that gives our farmers some options for when these sorts of regulations come down, right? And according to Assemblymember Bennett, it's coming. And I think we also need to take a look at, like I've pointed out, whether you're in SOAR or not, oftentimes depends on what letters are written on that parcel map in the county planning department. And there are parcels out there that are labeled, currently zoned as agriculture or open space. And that's not really what they are. One example that comes to mind is there is a parcel in the Oxnard Plain that is a former industrial site. It's been cleaned up, but it was never in ag production. It will never be in ag production again.
How did it make it on the map like that?
It is because the maps were drawn by a person.
Okay.
And, at the time, they don't go out parcel by parcel. They would look at an overview map and say, this is agriculture. and draw a circle, right? So sometimes some of the individual parcels, it just didn't fit, but it never was resolved. So this parcel here, however, would be perfect for a potential heavy vehicle charging station,
Okay.
which would better fit with state mandates, right? Coming down from the Air Resources Board to convert our semi trucks and freight to all electric. We need those charging stations, but the only way that could happen on this parcel, because of SOAR, is through a vote of the people,
Right.
which is several $1 million.
Right.
What do we do about that parcel? So looking at SOAR, right, how do we be more mindful of, on a parcel by parcel basis, what is the best use? What is the current use? What use do we need for the future? I think there was no way for the writers of SOAR to anticipate everything that happened.
No.
And or even to anticipate what's coming down from the state.
Right.
And the requirements, and even what our needs are under our county climate action plan. These were discussions that we couldn't even imagine at the time. So we need to have them now.
But I mean, saying that you got to take 10% or whatever of your use, your agriculture use out of production, is like saying to somebody that has like a store, hey, for electricity conservation, you got to take 30% of your square footage of your store out of production.
But you can't be anything other than a store.
Right. And your rent doesn't change.
No. Nor do your labor costs, nor do your, and you're still responsible for, maintenance on that 30% or whatever. Now that has not come down.
But it could.
But it could, and it is being discussed. So, and we need to be mindful of these sorts of things coming down.
So, in terms of housing, I'm just going to say this. In terms of housing, SOAR, especially the municipal ordinances, we're supposed to, again, it's all about land use and the best use of land. And it was supposed to create a situation with a lot of infill development. We're developing property into housing or businesses that is already zoned for those things. And we're just like redeveloping it, as opposed to taking agriculture land and turning it into those things. But it hasn't really turned out that way. And so I think in terms of housing and agriculture, we need to re-examine this. Closing out, Louise, what can our audience do to learn more about this or to start participating in these discussions?
Well, if I can give a shameless plug.
Okay.
I have a podcast as well. It's called Ag on the Edge.
Okay.
And what we're trying to do is, you don't need to take my word for anything that I've said today. What I'm doing with the other podcast is I'm bringing in farmers, I'm bringing in growers, I'm bringing in, water district folks. I'll be bringing in the folks that train people on how to apply, crop management materials and the like. Listen to them directly.
Well, you do what I do. It sounds like you bring experts onto your podcasts and let them explain it.
So that, talk to farmers, talk to all different kinds of farmers, pay attention, definitely look into not just one regulation, but how do the regulations fit and work together?
Right. It's a complicated machine.
Yeah.
Well, and one last thing, how can our audience find out more about Ventura County CoLAB? Ventura County
CoLAB, VC CoLAB, CoLABVC.org is
Awesome.
our website. And we have lots of events. We have lots of educational seminars. We try to keep our members informed about what's going on and educate and share the stories about what's going on there. So hopefully folks will come and check out our website and possibly get involved.
Awesome. Well, Louise, thank you for being here. We've really appreciated talking with you. To our audience, thank you for joining us again. Remember, if you like the programs that we're putting together, to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, reach out to me, Rob, at vcrealtors.com, or you can find Louise's information on the website, I'm sure. In the meantime, we will talk to you later. Thank you.